The world of Runeterra has already developed a strong lineup of classes. With classes ranging from mages to fighters, tanks to marksmen, Riot Games has developed the framework to create an engaging and fun class system that they can use for their upcoming MMO title. In League of Legends, every champion has an assigned class, with a limited number also possessing a secondary class. These classes represent a defined set of patterns in players' behavior, reactions to environment, and overall gameplay mechanics. In this video, I'm setting out to list these classes, what their playstyle is, and how they may correlate into the MMO. I will not only go over the 7 classes, but also include the 11 subclasses, as well as the opportunity for the specialist class. If you were to be given the list of League of Legends classes without having any experience from playing League, you would assume that these were coming from some form of RPG, MMO, or D&D rule set. The main 7 classes include controllers, who assist their allies with potent utility and keep enemies at bay with crowd control. Fighters, who are a diverse group of short-range combatants who excel at both dealing and surviving damage. Mages, who typically possess great reach, ability-based area of effect damage, and crowd control, and who use all of these strengths in tandem with each other to trap and destroy enemies from a distance. Marksmen, who use their reach to land massive continuous damage from a distance. Slayers, a highly mobile champion who specializes in single target burst damage and high mobility. Tanks, tough melee champions who sacrifice damage in exchange for powerful crowd control and the ability to absorb massive amounts of damage while deflecting it from their allies. And lastly, we have the specialist. Specialists are a diverse group of champions who do not fit the neat little box in regards to other class or subclass specifications. And there you have it, the 7 main class archetypes found in the world of Runeterra. Now let's dig a little bit deeper. In League of Legends at least, most of these classes have a very strongly defined role that they are oftentimes required to play. In an MMO that may contain single player, small party, and large scale raid content, their toolsets may be expanded upon to create a little bit of balance in the gameplay. Now this is not to say that they will be turned into a homogeneous mix, but for example, the Slayer class, who generally focuses on single target DPS exclusively, will more than likely still have some area of effect abilities in the MMO that are just not found in League. Now let's go over some of these classes and their subclasses and kind of speculate a little bit more on how they'll translate into the MMO game. First on this list is the controller. Controllers in League generally focus on supporting their allies with buffs and crowd controlling enemies. In the MMO, I'm sure this will be expanded upon by giving them a larger toolset as well as creating a more defined gameplay loop. Controllers are first and foremost a support class whose subclasses are catchers and enchanters. Catchers specialize in locking down opponents or, in some cases, entire battlefields by creating intense zones of threat that only foolish enemies would dare wade through. Enchanters focus on amplifying their allies' effectiveness by directly augmenting them and defending them from incoming threats. Next, we have the fighter and its juggernaut and diver subclasses. Juggernauts are melee titans who relentlessly march down the opposition and devastate those foolish enough to get within their grasp. They are the only subclass who excel at both dealing damage and taking significant amounts of damage. But in turn, they have a tough time closing in on targets due to their low range and extremely limited mobility. Divers are the more mobile portion of the fighter class. Divers excel at singling out high priority targets to blitz toward, immediately forcing those targets and their teammates to deal with the diver's presence. Divers are not as durable as the tanks or juggernauts of the world, but divers can take their fair share of punishment while bringing enough damage to be a real threat if left unchecked. Next up, we have mages, who generally specialize in magic damage. Mages don't have as obvious of subclasses in League of Legends, but they are grouped by burst and battle mages. The burst, while being the least defined subclass I will speak of in this video, aim to single out vulnerable targets by locking them down and following up with devastating barrage of damage from range. Battle mage, also known as warlocks, get into the middle of the fray, seeking to wreak havoc upon their enemies with the overwhelming sustained area damage. I don't need to explain too much about the mage class, as it's been done in pretty much every fantasy MMO ever created, as well as every RPG and D&D out there. It's a very consistent class and you can expect it to be in the MMO. Marksman is the only class that does not contain any subclasses in League, and this may carry over to the MMO as the class has a very defined role and playstyle even at its core. Marksmen use their reach to land massive continuous damage from a distance. Marksmen are capable of taking down even the toughest of opponents when positioned behind the safety of their team. Think Legolas, or even Robin Hood for that matter. or your typical ranger/hunter archetype from other RPGs. Next on our list, we have the Slayer, your resident edgelord assassin class. Slayers are natural opportunists and prefer to strike when their targets are alone and vulnerable. The Slayer class has two subclasses, the Assassin and Skirmisher. Assassins specialize in infiltrating enemy lines with their unrivaled mobility to quickly dispatch high-priority targets. Due to their mostly melee nature, assassins must put themselves into dangerous positions in order to execute their targets. Luckily, they often have defensive tricks up their sleeves that, if used cleverly, allow them to effectively avoid incoming damage. The Skirmisher, also known as duelists, aim to shred through any nearby enemy that approaches. Because skirmishers lacked high burst damage or reliable ways of closing in on high-priority targets, they are instead armed with situationally powerful defensive tools to survive in the fray, along with extreme sustained damage to cut down even the most durable targets. Next on our list, and probably the most MMO-ready of all the classes, is the Tank class. The Tank will be your aggro-holding, damage-absorbing class. The Tank has two subclasses consisting of the Vanguard and the Warden. Vanguards are offensive tanks. Vanguards lead the charge for their team and specialize at bringing the action. Their explosive teamfight initiation seeks to catch enemies out of position while allowing allies to follow up to the devastating effect. Wardens, on the other hand, are the defensive tanks. Wardens stand steadfast, seeking to hold the line by persistently locking down any oncomers who try to pass them. Wardens keep their allies out of harm's way and allow them to safely deal with the enemies caught in the fray. Last on the list, we have the Specialist. While not even remotely as clearly defined as the other classes and subclasses, it does provide an outlet for Riot Games to create new classes and experiences outside of the potentially limiting roles predefined in the other 6 main classes. In League of Legends, the Specialist is oftentimes seen to be controllers who consequently specialize in zone control. Will we see these type of battlefield controlling classes in the MMO? I personally kind of doubt it and expect them to focus on the 6 main classes and their subclasses, and potentially expand on adding healer subclasses and a little more diversity overall. They have stated in multiple tweets and Q&As that they plan on creating a game that will focus on team play and don't want to completely rewrite the rock, paper, scissors RPG go-to, but instead they want to expand upon it for the future of MMO gaming. So now it's your turn. What class do you look forward to playing the most? Are there any classes you think should have made the list that weren't on here? Let me know in the comments below. And always, my name is Spun, and I will see you next time. Peace.